Rice feeds more people on Earth than any other single crop. It supplies roughly a fifth of all the calories humans consume and serves as a daily staple in over 60 countries. But behind that one familiar word are thousands of distinct varieties, each with its own history, texture, and purpose in the kitchen. The difference between a perfect risotto and a perfect biryani starts with understanding which grain to reach for. These are 10 of the most important types of rice from around the world, and what makes each one different. Basmati. The iconic long-grain rice of India and Pakistan, Basmati has been cultivated in the Himalayan foothills for centuries. The name comes from Sanskrit roots meaning fragrant, and the fragrance is real. A compound called 2-acetyl-1-pyrroline gives Basmati a nutty, almost popcorn-like aroma that fills the kitchen the moment you lift the lid. The grains are unusually slender, and when cooked, they elongate to roughly twice their original length, while staying firm and completely separate from one another. That quality makes Basmati the natural partner for biryani and pilaf, dishes where each grain needs to stand on its own. In 1997, a Texas company called Rice Tech was granted a United States patent titled Basmati Rice Lines and Grains, effectively claiming ownership of Basmati-style rice grown in the Western Hemisphere. India considered it biopiracy. The country's Agricultural Export Authority submitted roughly 50,000 pages of evidence challenging the patent. Rice Tech eventually withdrew 15 of its 20 claims, and the United States Patent Office forced the company to strip the word Basmati from the patent title entirely. The case became a landmark in international food intellectual property, and it directly spurred India to pass its own Geographical Indications Act in 1999, protecting the names of traditional products from being claimed by foreign corporations. Basmati gets its fragrance from that single compound, 2-acetyl-1-pyrroline, and the exact same compound shows up in another rice, grown thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia, jasmine rice. Thailand's famous fragrant rice is officially called Thai Hom Mali, and its story starts with something close to a happy accident. An aromatic local variety was noticed by a farmer in Chonburi province around 1945, and agricultural officials selected it for pure line breeding in 1951. The standout line, known as Khao Dak Mali 105, was released to Thai farmers in 1959 and became the foundation of the country's rice identity. The name jasmine refers not to the scent, but to the color of the grain, white like jasmine blossoms. Like Basmati, jasmine carries that popcorn-like fragrance, but the eating experience is noticeably different. Jasmine is softer and slightly more moist, with grains that cling just a little on the plate. It is the everyday partner to Thai green curry, stir-fries, and grilled meats across Southeast Asia. The finest Hom Mali comes from the Tung Chularongthai Plateau in northeastern Thailand, where it can only be harvested once a year, between October and November. The soil, the seasonal flooding, and the climate create what rice experts describe as a terroir effect, not unlike wine. Thai Hom Mali has repeatedly won the world's best rice title at the International World Rice Conference, and that single annual harvest is a big part of why. Jasmine cooks up soft but keeps each grain more or less separate, and the reason comes down to starch. Every rice grain contains two types. Amylose keeps grains firm and apart. Amylopectin makes them cling together. The more amylopectin a rice has, the stickier it gets. And few varieties lean harder into that sticky side than Japanese short grain. Japanese short grain rice. In Japan, everyday table rice is a short, plump grain prized for being glossy, subtly sweet, and just sticky enough to eat with chopsticks or press into shapes. The gold standard variety is Koshi Hikari, meaning the light of Koshi, bred in Fukui Prefecture and registered in 1956. Its high amylopectin content gives it that gentle, satisfying cling. In the United States, most rice labeled Sushi Rice is actually Calrose, a Japanese-style variety grown in California. Sushi itself is a rice story, not a fish story. It began as narazushi, a preservation technique from Southeast Asia, where fish was packed in rice and left to ferment for months. The sour fermented rice was originally discarded. This method reached Japan alongside wet rice farming, and over centuries, cooks began experimenting with shortcuts. Eventually, someone swapped slow fermentation for rice vinegar to get the sour flavor instantly. Modern nigiri, a small mound of vinegared rice topped with a slice of fish, is commonly attributed to a chef named Hanaya Yohei, who refined it in the 1820s at a food stall in Edo, now modern-day Tokyo. The word sushi itself means sour tasting and refers to the vinegared rice, not the topping. And here is something that surprises people outside Japan. Raw salmon on sushi is not a Japanese tradition. It entered the country through a Norwegian government trade initiative called Project Japan, launched in 1985 to sell surplus Atlantic salmon to Japanese buyers. It took years of convincing, but within 2 decades, Norway was exporting 45,000 metric tons of salmon to Japan annually. Today, salmon is one of the most popular sushi toppings in the world. Sushi rice is sticky enough to mold between your fingers, but there is a rice that takes stickiness to an entirely different level. Sticky rice, also called glutinous rice, though it contains no actual gluten whatsoever. What makes it remarkably sticky is its starch profile. Nearly zero amylose, almost all amylopectin. In Laos and the Isan region of northeastern Thailand, this rice is called khao niao, and it is not a side dish, it is the meal. Unlike other rice, sticky rice is never boiled. It is soaked in water overnight and then steamed in a tall woven bamboo basket called a huad. When ready, people pull off small clumps with their fingers, roll them into tight balls, and use them to scoop up larb, papaya salad, grilled meats, and chili dips. No fork, no spoon, no chopsticks. Just hands and rice. Sticky rice is so central to Lao identity that Laotians call themselves Luk Khao Niao, which translates to children of the sticky rice. The country consumes more of it per person than anywhere else on earth. It also stars in desserts across the region. Thai mango sticky rice, steamed with coconut cream and served alongside slices of ripe mango, has become one of the most recognized street foods in Bangkok. Sticky rice clings to itself, but the next rice is prized for doing something almost opposite, releasing its starch outward, slowly, into the liquid around it. Arborio, a plump, chalky-looking medium-grain rice named after the town of Arborio in the Po Valley of Italy's Piedmont region. Rice arrived in Italy centuries ago and spread through the Po Valley from the 15th century onward, but the Arborio variety itself is a more recent development. What makes Arborio special is how it behaves when stirred. Its high amylopectin content allows the outer layer of each grain to release starch gradually into the surrounding liquid, building risotto's signature creamy consistency. Meanwhile, the center of each grain stays firm and slightly chewy, giving every bite that satisfying resistance Italians call al dente. A single grain of Arborio can absorb roughly 5 times its weight in broth, which is why risotto demands patience and ladleful after ladleful of warm stock added over time. One of the most famous risotto dishes, risotto alla Milanese, is tied by legend to a 16th century glassmaker's apprentice working on Milan's Duomo Cathedral. As the story goes, the apprentice used saffron to tint stained glass and, as a joke at a wedding feast, stirred some into the rice. The golden, fragrant result was such a hit that it became a dish in its own right. Risotto Milanese is still served across Milan today. Arborio releases starch to build creaminess. But across the Mediterranean in Spain, another rice does something almost opposite. Bomba. Grown in the wetlands near Valencia's Albufera lagoon, bomba is the prized grain for authentic paella. Rice arrived in Spain through the Moors during Al-Andalus, and bomba has been cultivated in this region for centuries. Where Arborio releases starch outward, bomba holds itself together. It absorbs roughly 3 times its volume in liquid, compared to the usual 2, and it expands in width rather than length. That means bomba can soak up enormous amounts of saffron-infused stock without turning soft or falling apart. This quality is critical for developing what many consider the single most important element of a good paella, the socarrat, the thin layer of caramelized, slightly crispy rice that forms at the bottom of the pan. Getting the socarrat right requires a grain that can handle high direct heat over an open flame without disintegrating and Bomba is built for exactly that. There is one fact about paella that surprises almost everyone who hears it. Authentic paella valenciana contains no seafood at all. The original dish was a farmer's lunch, cooked over an open fire in the fields outside Valencia, made with rice, rabbit, chicken, snails, and local beans. Seafood paella is a later coastal variation that became more famous internationally, but in Valencia, the original version is still considered the real one. Bomba arrived in Spain through Arab traders centuries ago, but the next rice arrived in America through something far darker. If you are enjoying this, hit subscribe. I cover food and history like this every week, and there is plenty more coming. Carolina Gold. This golden-hued long-grain rice made Charleston, South Carolina, one of the wealthiest cities in colonial America, and its history is one of the most complicated of any food on the continent. The grain arrived in the Carolina Lowcountry in the late 1600s. As the story goes, a storm-damaged ship paid for repairs in Charleston Harbor with a cargo of gold seed rice, possibly from Madagascar. The grain thrived in the marshy tidal landscape of the coast, but not by accident. It was enslaved West Africans, brought from rice-growing regions of Senegal, Sierra Leone, and the Windward Coast, who carried the knowledge of how to cultivate rice in flooded tidal marshes. Their expertise turned Carolina Gold into a commercial powerhouse that dominated the global rice trade for over a century. Carolina rice became a synonym for long-grain rice worldwide. When the Civil War ended slavery, the rice economy collapsed almost immediately. Without forced labor, and with hurricanes destroying the irrigation infrastructure, production fell apart. The last commercial crop of Carolina Gold was harvested around 1927. The variety was functionally extinct. Then, in the 1980s, a Savannah eye surgeon and duck hunter named Richard Schulze tracked down preserved seed stock in a USDA gene bank in Texas. He obtained 14 pounds of seed, planted it at his property in Hardeeville, South Carolina, and within a few years was harvesting thousands of pounds annually. The Carolina Gold Rice Foundation was established in 1988 to preserve the grain and the complicated cultural history that surrounds it. Carolina Gold carries one of the heaviest histories of any food in America. But the next rice is surrounded by legend of a very different kind: black rice. When cooked, the grains turn a deep, iridescent purple, dark enough to stain the water, the pot, and anything else they touch. The color comes from anthocyanins, the same antioxidant pigments found in blueberries and blackberries. Black rice is often called forbidden rice or emperor's rice. The legend says that in ancient China, this grain was so rare and so prized that it was reserved exclusively for the emperor and the imperial household. Whether that story is documented history or folk tradition, the scarcity part is real. Black rice is a notoriously low-yielding crop, producing far less per harvest than white or brown varieties, and that low output historically kept it expensive and difficult to find. What makes black rice stranger still is where it came from. Geneticists have traced the dark pigmentation to a single mutation in one gene. Wild rice ancestors were reddish, never black. Black rice does not exist anywhere in nature. It is entirely a human creation, bred by ancient farmers who noticed a rare dark grain and chose, generation after generation, to keep planting it. Compared to polished white rice, black rice contains significantly more fiber, protein, and iron. It is used across Asia in both savory dishes and desserts, particularly the sweet coconut milk rice puddings popular in Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines. Black rice exists because of centuries of deliberate human selection, but the next entry on this list is not something humans created at all. In fact, it is not even rice. Wild rice. Despite the name, wild rice is not rice. It belongs to a completely different genus called Zizania and is the seed of an aquatic grass native to North America, the only cereal grain that originated on the continent. To the Ojibwe people of the Great Lakes region, this grain is manumin, meaning the good berry, and it holds a place at the very center of their culture. According to oral tradition, the Ojibwe migrated westward from the Atlantic coast, guided by a prophecy to seek the place where food grows on water. That journey led them to the shallow lakes and slow-moving rivers around Lake Superior, where wild rice beds stretched across the surface of the water. The harvest has not changed much in centuries. In late summer, two people paddle a canoe into the rice beds. One guides the boat, while the other uses wooden sticks called knockers to gently bend the tall stalks over the side and tap the ripe grains loose. The rice falls into the bottom of the canoe. After collection, it is parched over open fire to remove the husk. The result is a long, dark, needle-like grain with a nutty, earthy chew that no true rice can replicate. Genuine hand-harvested manoomin from native communities commands a far higher price than commercially cultivated paddy wild rice grown in flooded fields in California and Minnesota. Minnesota is the only state in the country that has designated wild rice as its official state grain, and European explorers originally called it wild rice, only because the aquatic harvest reminded them of Asian rice paddies. Wild rice is not a type of rice, and in a way, the final entry on this list is not a type either. It is a process. Parboiled rice. White rice and brown rice are not different plants. They are the same grain at different stages of processing. Brown rice has only the outer hull removed, leaving the fibrous bran and nutrient-rich germ intact. White rice goes further, polishing away both the bran and the germ to leave only the starchy center. That makes white rice softer and faster to cook, but it strips out most of the B vitamins, fiber, and minerals. Parboiling is an ancient technique, originating in India, that tries to get the best of both. The process starts with paddy rice, still sealed inside its husk. It is soaked in water, steamed under pressure, and dried before milling. That heat and moisture drive water-soluble vitamins and minerals from the outer bran layer inward, into the starchy core of the grain. So even after the bran is milled away, parboiled white rice retains significantly more nutrients than standard milled white rice. It also toughens the grain, producing rice that cooks up firm, fluffy, and noticeably less sticky with a faint golden yellow tint. The most famous parboiled brand in America was Uncle Ben's, now called Ben's Original, launched in 1943. It was the top-selling rice in the country for decades. The converted rice, process behind it, traces to a patent filed by German-British chemist Erich Husenlaub in the 1910s. And one of the earliest financial backers of the product was Forrest Mars Sr., the man behind the Mars candy empire. The same family responsible for M&Ms helped make parboiled rice a fixture of American kitchens. The International Rice Gene Bank in the Philippines holds over 132,000 individual rice samples and wild relatives, the largest collection on Earth. Behind a grain so common that most people never stop to think about it sits 10,000 years of human history, agriculture, and culture. Every one of those varieties started the same way. Someone, somewhere, chose to plant one particular seed instead of another.